Black Friday is around the corner and it's time to make a value for money PC in New Zealand. Today I've gone with a decent budget of $1,259 on this PC. So it's pretty affordable and the parts here are already on special, at least most of them are, so it's quite a good deal to look out for. Let's get straight into this build. First off, I've gone with the Ryzen 5 5500. It's a 6-core processor and at around about $180 from PB Tech. Now they're the only ones that have it around this price, and I think it's a pretty good offering for a 6-core processor that's basically on par with the 3600 and a lot of games. It's a good processor and it's slightly newer, which is great as well. I think it's good value for money at under $200. Now there are other options such as the 11400F that can come down to about $240 New Zealand, which is also a pretty good offering. And if you can get a good i5 12400F for around about $280, that's also some good options for an Intel build. As well, you can get a 5600. I've seen them go down to 200 before by Computer Launch one time. I personally got that deal, and 220 for the 5600 as well. So there are some options for AMD and Intel as alternatives and high performing processors as well. But at the same time, this is a pretty good processor for the money at $180 New Zealand. The motherboard I paired this up with is the MSI B550M Pro VDH. Comes in at around about $205 from PB Tech. There's nothing too spectacular about this motherboard. It has 4 DIMM slots in here. It has Wi-Fi built in, which is great to see. It's a pretty basic motherboard overall. Nothing too special. Now it is a little bit expensive for a B550 at $205, to be honest with you guys. At the same time, a lot of motherboards in New Zealand seem to be quite pricey, so I'm not sure what's going on there, but it is a decent motherboard for its offering, and that's why I put it in here. Now a good thing about this one is it has PCIe 4.0 as well, which is great to see. Now the downside is the Ryzen 5 5500 only does PCIe 3.0, so if you guys need the 4.0, which you might do with some of the graphics cards options, you probably want to get a better processor, such as a Ryzen 5 5600 with PCIe 4.0 or an 11400F and above from Intel. Now do keep this in mind, and I'll show you later when I give the graphics card recommendation. Onto the RAM, we've gone with 16 gigs of DDR4 3200 CL16 from Kingston, the Fury Beast, $89 from Computer Launch at the moment. That's very cheap, and usually these ones range anywhere from about 100 to 110 usually, so that's not too bad. $90 or $89 from Computer Launch on special at the moment. I think it's a pretty solid kit of RAM. It doesn't have any RGB. It's pretty basic, but this build's kind of aiming at that value sector, so I think you guys can probably skip out on that RGB here. And if you want to in the future, your motherboard will have 4 DIMM slots, so if you guys want to put more later, there's also that option. It's a good solid kit of RAM and it's pretty cheap at the moment, so that's why I went for it. Now for the storage, I've gone with a single SSD, a Crucial MX500, a 500 gig SSD. It comes in at $78.99 from PB Tech on special at the moment. It's a pretty good offering, especially for a 500 gig SSD. It's one of the cheaper ones, and it's a 2.5 inch size as well, so it's a little bit bigger, just normal SATA one instead of an M.2 form factor or NVMe. But for $78.99, I think it's a pretty good offering. It's very quick and it has a DRAM cache as well, so you'll be good to go for your operating system. Now if you want to add more storage, of course you can go with a Seagate or WD hard drive for around about $80 for 1 terabyte, around about, or you can go second hand and just don't put any of your important or personal files on there that you could lose. Heading on to the graphics card, probably the most important part of this build is the MSI RX 6600. It's an 8 gig card and it comes in at around $448.99 from PB Tech or $439 from First Wave. Now this is a pretty decent price, around about anywhere under $480 for an RX 6600. They generally are around $500 to $520, so this is quite a significant savings, or around about $70. I think it's a decent card, especially in this build when we're trying to aim for that value and that performance here. Now the only downside is this card is supposed to use PCIe 4.0 to take advantage of all the lanes. Now the only limitation in this build is that this graphics card is preferably supposed to have a PCIe 4.0 motherboard and CPU compatible with it. So in this instance, we've gone with the Ryzen 5 5500, which is PCIe 3.0 instead of 4.0. Now the build that this is targeted at is probably 1080p users who are probably going to play stuff like League of Legends, Fortnite, Valorant, things like that, esports titles basically. And from what I've seen, it doesn't really have too much of an impact on game performance, at least on today's titles. Now I can't say that for down the road, especially for AAA titles that come out in the future and do become more hungry on that bandwidth for the PCIe 4.0 requirement, especially for this graphics card at least. But I think at this customer segment, or at least the people who are going to build something like this, I don't think it's going to affect you in this build that much. So this should be good to go on the 5500. You shouldn't have too many issues. It's a relatively fast card and it's good for 1080p, especially for those esports titles. Let's head on to the case. I've gone with the Silverstone Phara R1 Pro. This one comes with 4 RGB fans in it. It's $109 from Computer Lounge, and it's a little compact case, to be honest with you. It's not the largest of all. On the width sides, it's a little bit squished in. At least it has a power supply shroud, which is good, and it comes with those 4 fans inbuilt. So you won't need to buy any fans in this build, and it's all pretty much good to go. You just need to wire them up to your motherboard, to the RGB 5-volt connector. I haven't built on it personally, but it is quite a nice case from what I've read on reviews online, and it's a good price at $109 right now. If you guys have a look as well, there'll also be the Vantex P300A that should go down to around about the same price, about $100. If it does, I'd probably say that's the better buy, but in this instance, $109 for this type of case is pretty decent. Lastly, we've got the power supply. I've gone with the Silverstone DA650. Again, we're going with a Silverstone theme here. I'm not trying to do it deliberately, but in this instance, the Silverstone DA650 was one of the cheaper, fully modular power supplies. $149 from Computer Lounge. Now, it's not the best power supplies. Personally, I would probably look for a Fractal Design Ion power supply, one from EVGA that's non-modular and it could be a little bit cheaper, or one from Corsair. The RMX line is really high quality, but for this type of build, especially where there's probably not going to be any overclocking, you should be good to go in terms of using it for a mid-range or even budget build in this instance. Overall, I think this is a good computer for someone, again, who's going to use it for 1080p gaming, especially playing esports, and I think it will do decent on AAA titles. It will be a little bit different, and your mileage might vary a little bit just due to it being a mid-range low-end build. We have made some compromises here, but in terms of the graphics card, for example, I would have preferably wanted to put a RX 6600 XT or a RTX 3060 for around about $550, but there are none at the moment, so they're all around about $600, which is a bit expensive, to be honest with you, but that would be the next step up, and this would be a monster of a computer. Also with that, with the processor, if you guys can upgrade it to something like the 5600 from AMD, or even the 11400F from Intel, the i5 11400F, that'd also be good options to go for if you want to pimp this build out a little bit. I will have a video coming out on how to basically find deals in New Zealand, on how to make builds without me doing this, because to be honest with you guys, I'm not that happy with putting out a build like every month or two every month, just because prices like don't move that much in New Zealand, and builds can remain relevant in New Zealand for like a number of months sometimes. So I don't want to keep putting out the same thing, but I have seen a major shift from the previous September build to today, so that's the reason I'm going to put this out. And as well, because Black Friday is just around the corner, so you guys probably don't have a reference point on what to look for in terms of buying brand new. So that about sums up the video. Thank you guys very much for watching. Make sure you can check out ystech.org for latest post reviews and much more. I'll see you guys there at ystech.org. But other than that, I hope you guys are having an awesome day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.